Minutes of your time. I come from a small village called Musquodoboit Harbour, Nova Scotia. And in this village when I was growing up, there were no Sikh people. In fact, there are no people of Indian descent. But when I was 13 or 14 years old in junior high school, I was a bit different than the other kids. The other boys were talking about cars and hunting because it was a rural area, and I was thinking about God and politics. And I got to tell you frankly, it didn't make me the most popular kid on the playground, and I got to really be thankful to my friends for sticking with me through that time. What it was is that I was born into a Christian family, and my family has been living in those villages in the eastern shore of Nova Scotia for a very long time. They settled there in 1783, so hundreds of years ago. And we liked it so much, we just decided to never leave. And so I was born Christian, but as I was going through junior high school, I was thinking that, you know, the value system that I have and the life path that I wanted to follow was not really aligning with with the church that I was pursuing at that point. And that's not to say that I was making a right or wrong commentary, because as we know in Sikhism, we don't do that. If you want to be a Christian, that's fine, be a good Christian. If you want to be a Muslim, that's fine, be a good Muslim. But for me, I was looking elsewhere, and so I began on a path of personal discovery to find the path that was right for me. And so I would search for about 3 or 4 years, and I didn't find what I was looking for, and then I stopped, and I took a break. And then when I was out in Calgary, I was at a convention, and at this youth convention, or I should say a convention where there was a youth session, there was a gentleman sitting 2 rows behind me. And he was a Sikh man, the first Sikh person I'd ever seen in my entire life in the flesh. And he had an enormous beard, and you also had to be under the age of 25 to be in the session. And for me at that time, I couldn't reconcile how someone could be so young and have such a large beard, but as we know, there are many that do. And so it made me curious, and I went and I started chatting with him, and then the next day I chatted with him again because we met up and we had opportunity. And at the end of that day, he made me an offer. He said, "Martin, you know, when you get back home to Nova Scotia, if you're still interested in learning more about Sikhism, you know, give us a call and we'll put something together for you." And it was a very gracious offer, and so I took them up on that offer. And when I got home to Nova Scotia, I called him up. His name is Dalinder Ajla, and he still lives in the northeast of Calgary to this day. And they sent me out a big box of books, not just books on Sikhism, but books on the history of Sikhism and the history of Punjab also. And what it was is that as a result of reading these books, I was able to develop a very comprehensive view of what Sikhism was all about. And it allowed me to understand, you know, the who, what, when, where, why of, you know, everything that our community does, everything that we do as people of faith, everything that we do as Sikhs. And it was as a result of that I knew then that the Sikh faith was right for me, but still it was difficult to follow it. Why? Well, I mentioned to you that my family's been living in those villages, you know, for about the last 250 years. Now, the crowd here is a bit of a younger crowd than I usually talk to, but for some of the older ones, so maybe you're born in India, you can imagine if you're living in your pen where your family's been from for hundreds of years, and you wake up one day and you do something a little bit different than what you've done before and what your family's done and friends and community has done, you feel a bit of pressure, kind of like peer pressure that you feel in school. Well, I too felt this peer pressure, and so I thought about it for a couple more months. But I knew that the Guru had spoken to me directly and shown me the path that was right for me. And I knew also that for those of us who are believers, there comes a day in all of our lives when we come to our last sunrise and our last sunset, and we enter into that conversation with the Almighty. And I could not bear the thought of being present at this conversation, knowing that I had been so very fortunate to find the path that was right for me, but then not have the confidence to follow it. And so that was the day I became a Sikh. And some things came very easy, some things not so easy. I can tell you that time my pug was extremely difficult. I go to the Gurmat and people would say, "You know, Martin, it looks like you fell asleep in your pug." And I'd say, "Okay, I'll keep to work on that." 21 years later of experience, and it meets the minimum standard. But Sikhism has very much been a gift that has kept on giving. Some 3 years later, I returned to Calgary, to Martindale Gurmat, where I took Amrit. And 4 years after that, I received a phone call from that same gentleman who I had first met, Dalinder. And he said to me, "Martin, my family has agreed to give you some help." And I said, "Dalinder, I don't remember asking for any help." And he said, "No, you didn't, but you need some." And I said, "Okay, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, you're getting into marrying age, and Sikh people spend a lot of time and consultation and consideration about marriage, and you don't have a Sikh family. And so my family has agreed to take you in as one of our own, as my younger brother in effect. And I was deeply touched by this. I mean, prior to this, I mean, just to give you an idea, the entire province of Nova Scotia has about 150 families, Sikh families, and so the Sangat there is not very large. In fact, there are more people in this room than we have Sikh people in Nova Scotia, I would suspect. And up until that point, my Sikhism was really something that I had learned through books, and so I had read about how compassionate Sikh people were. I had read about how giving they were of themselves to others. But I had not really personally felt it at that point. With Dalvinder's personal offer and with the offer of his family to give me a helping hand in finding my life partner, I felt it. I felt this personal connection. And so what it did is it began another part of my life path, in that I had to decide what I was looking for in a life partner. At that time I was studying at university, and I knew that I was going to be returning home to Muscatabat Harbour, that same village. And although I had become a Sikh, I really needed someone to give me a helping hand with raising the children that we were going to plan to have as a family. And so as a result of that, I needed someone with either a religious studies or a fine arts or an arts background so that they understood Sikhism and the history of Punjab. And I was very fortunate that there was a young woman from Amritsar named Amandeep Kaur who has a master's degree in Punjabi literature, and she agreed to marry the guy from Nova Scotia, Canada. And you can imagine, in the same way that I took a big step to become a Sikh, she took a big step to marry the white guy. I mean, you come from Nova Scotia and you show up and you say, hey, I'm the white guy, no one's interested. Then you say you're from Canada, and then everybody's interested. and then you say you're from Nova Scotia, and then no one's interested again. You kind of get the look, right? You know, you're not from Toronto, you're not from BC, you know, where are you from? But she agreed to take the chance on me, and it was fantastic, you know. I mean, I remember being very, very concerned. I said, Deep, you know, when you fly into Heathrow, because her very first plane flight was to come be with me, you know, in the village where no Sikhs live. And I said, when you get to Heathrow, you know, please give me a call. It doesn't matter what time it is in Nova Scotia. So she did that. It was 2 o'clock in the morning in Nova Scotia. And I said, Deep, how you doing? How's Heathrow? And she said, Heathrow's fine. It's just like Punjab. There's Sikh people everywhere. And I said, fantastic. She was in a bit more shock when she flew into Halifax. For those of you who haven't flown into Halifax, the airport's in the middle of the woods. And so when you come from Amritsar, the city of about 1.7 million people, and then you land at the airport and there's nothing but jungle and animals all around, it can be a bit of a shock, but she's gotten over it. So we've been married for 14 years. We now have 3 children. We have identical twin boys who are 10 years old. We have a girl who's 8 years old and in grade 3. And we all live together. And so in that small village in Muscatabat Harbour where there used to be no Sikhs and then 1 Sikh, now there are 5. And that's my story, and I just felt that, you know, Paji gave me an opportunity to share that with you, and that's my story for you here today. I won't go into politics, you know, because your eyes will probably glaze over and whatnot, but I do ask you to please give me your support to join the NDP, visit my website. My campaign will be going around signing people up as members. Thank you for your time today. God bless you and your families. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Well, I gotta apologize first. Nova Scotia, wow, small town. I said Alberta. Actually, a few weeks ago when Martin Singh came to Dixie Gurdwara, the Pradhan Sahib came and, oh, Gora Singh aaya hai, Alberta to honu zarur aanke milna. So that's why I thought it was from Alberta. Right? So my apologies on that. But quite a touching story. It took Deep 14 years to get over it, which is living, so that's kind of neat. But comes back to the topic today, guys. Gore Singh are becoming Sikhs, are loving Sikh religion, finding pyar with the Guru, and us Punjabi people are coming from India and we're giving that pyar away. Okay, it's coming back to exactly what we're talking about today. I came from Punjab and I saw so many of our people going towards alcohol, sharaban wale nu ja rahe hain, hal tak Gore Sikh, and I have quite a lot of friends from Harinam Singh to people in LA who actually love Guru with their heart. And that's what it's got to boil down to. It's got to come from below. Right? देखो उन्होंने बच्चे भी हम बच्चे भी पाल रहे सिक्खी दे विच सिक्खी स्वरूप अमृतधारी भी हैगे ने देखो Haltikar Martin never thought he was going to be Sikh one day, and look what he became. Same with me. When I was born in England, I never thought one day I'll turn out and become Amritdhari, and been Amritdhari now for 28 plus years. And there's nothing like it. Guru da pyar. But a rang lagna chahiye da pehlo. Got to get that little spark going in there, pyari satsang. It's not difficult, but it can be difficult. It all depends on